Saturday, the 20th of November, first full day of the Thanksgiving retreat. And it's been a long day, been a long week, actually, long month, long life. That's when there's these assorted suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya where bhikkhus ask about different Pali words. They ask about different single words. They ask the Buddha, usually it'll be some bhikkhu asking about the Buddha, metta, metta, what is metta? Or nibbana, nibbana, what is nibbana? So one bhikkhu asks, samsara, samsara, what is samsara? And the Buddha answers, samsara is long, bhikkhu. That's just brilliant. So one of the reflections for me coming up this evening, because I'm quite tired, is that sense of kanti parami, that the definition of kanti, or what we translate as patient endurance, that's Luangpo Sumedho likes to interpret that as the willingness to be with unpleasant feeling and not make a problem out of it. Or it also harkens back to Luangpo Pasano's talk from earlier today, that suffering is a choice, actually. Making a problem out of something is a choice. So it's inevitable that in the course of the practice we're going to come up against difficulties, just physical difficulties, such as tiredness, not wanting to go to morning puja, not wanting to do evening puja, being tired, and it's unpleasant. These simple things, not getting what one wants is dukkha. I want to sleep longer. Not getting what one wants is dukkha. So, in terms of a monastic retreat, this is a good opportunity to contemplate these things, following the 8 precepts, committing to a regular meditation practice. This is actually something that will end up highlighting the anusaya, or the latent tendencies in the mind and the heart. And that's a good thing, because that's how we mature, that's how we grow in the practice. And taking up as a bit of a theme, at least for the beginning of the retreat, enjoyment. And Luangpo Cha would actually, talking about his own practice, he said, I suffered so much, I suffered immensely through the course of my own practice, but actually I really loved it. I really loved it the whole time. So that he said it was, the analogy he gave was, there's a certain type of, like a leaf, a Thai leaf, that it's very spicy and very tasty also. It's like a peppery, allowable medicine that can be taken in the afternoon by bhikkhus. And he said it's like this particular thing that you can eat, and when you eat it, it's incredibly spicy, and your nose is running and the tears are running, and it's painful, but it's so good you just can't stop eating it. And he said that's what the practice is like. So there is a benefit. We intuitively know that there's a benefit to the practice. So even though it's painful or it's grating against these anusaya, it's bringing up these latent tendencies, somehow we know it's good for us, so we keep doing it. Or we can think of it as learning, and frustration is a very essential part of learning. Without frustration, we don't learn. when we learn a skill, either we learn a language or learn a new skill, there's an inevitable frustration involved. Even if we have some sort of natural ability or natural talent, if we really want to learn or really better ourselves, then there's that inevitable frustration. And when the frustration occurs, there will be that impulse to give up or to quit. And that's only natural. And then if we push through that, and we embrace the frustration, then we end up learning something. And that's what the Buddha refers to when he uses the word bhavana. Bhavana is that sense of learning or bringing into being. Also, the word sikha means literally to learn. And sekha is like a learner, also translated as a trainee. Sekha. And asekha is the no more learner, also known as an arhat. So only the arhat is the no more learner. So we're all learners and we're all on this path of learning. And that's the sekha. And the training precepts are known as sikkhapada, or training guidelines. So the 8 precepts are to be taken not as commandments, but as training guidelines. And therefore, our benefit, every precept has something some way it benefits us. Or even if you think of the 227 bhikkhu precepts, every precept has a origin story. For example, the origin story against bhikkhus drinking alcohol. There's the bhikkhu who's renowned for his psychic powers and his ability to defeat a fierce naga, a fire naga. In one particular district, there was a fire naga, and this bhikkhu was able to subdue it. And then there's these rabble-rouser bhikkhus known as the group of 6. In Pali we call it the Chabagya bhikkhus. Chabagya bhikkhus, the group of 6. And they're always trying to create trouble, so they're in a lot of the origin stories of the Vinaya rules. And so the people are really taken with this bhikkhu who could subdue this powerful spirit in their local village. And then they ask some group of 6 bhikkhus, what can we do for him? How can we honor him? And then the group of 6 bhikkhus say, offer him pigeon-foot liquor. That's how you can honor him. And so, you remember that bhikkhu's name? Sarakani? Sagata, yes. Sarakani's a different one. Similar story, but different. Sagata, Venerable Sagata, who defeated the Ambatita Naga. Is that the name? If you can remember the name of the Naga, you get extra credit. Ambatita Naga? Okay, I got the extra credit. And so then they offer this pigeon-foot liquor. We'll call it moonshine. They offer moonshine to Sagata, Venerable Sagata, on alms round, and him, to show his respect for the lay people, presumably, he drinks it during the alms round as it gets offered to him, and repeatedly, lay people having repeatedly offered Venerable Sagata pigeon's foot liquor, some sort of strong liquor, then he staggers to the edge of the village and passes out. He falls over at the village gate. And then the Buddha is also on alms round, on a different alms route. He comes back and sees him, and he tells the other bhikkhus, pick up Venerable Sagata and take him back to the monastery. And so they take him back to the monastery, and then they lay him down, and with his head facing toward the Buddha, And then he gets up and points his feet at the Buddha. And he changes positions and points his feet at the Buddha. And the Buddha says, "Look, bhikkhus, formerly was Venerable Saggata respectful toward the Blessed One?" And they say, "Yes, Lord." He says, "Now is he showing respect toward the Blessed One?" "No, Lord." "Formerly, could Venerable Saggata do battle with the Ambatita Naga?" "Yes, Lord." "Now could he do battle even with a salamander?" "No, Lord." And so then he says, "Just so, bhikkhus, I formulate a training rule, you're not to drink alcohol." So that's the origin story to the no alcohol for bhikkhus rule. So that's also one of the 8 precepts, actually one of the 5 precepts. The Buddha called it the basis of negligence. It's not morally wrong to drink alcohol, but it causes us to break all the other precepts. So he called it the basis of negligence. So we see that every rule, every precept has its value, so we practice with these things. And for anybody who wants, it's quite fun to study the Vinaya, Buddhist monastic code, 1 and 2. They're quite detailed, and it's quite a detailed legal code and has many layers of meaning, and it's quite wonderful that we have this actually as a thing that we can use to train ourselves with, whether it's the 5, 8, 210 for the novices or the 227. So this is something we use to help us to bhavana, to cultivate, to learn. So on a retreat, we would like to develop some good experiences, some sense of enjoyment, maybe even good meditation experiences. We would like to develop a sense of ease and well-being, peaceful. So we would like to know how to do that. And really it comes back to cultivating the path. There's just no shortcuts. There's no way around it. Everybody is at their own place on the path on the long road of samsara. Everybody has their own spiritual qualities, what we call parami. And so one thing that can be helpful is to not get into that judging or comparing mind. Everybody seems so peaceful, but I'm not. Or just making assumptions about ourselves or others, being very forgiving with ourselves and others. It's when we cultivate and we meditate regularly, when we practice all the time, there's no way that every meditation session is going to go well. There's going to be distracted thoughts or what we call the defilements coming in. That's to be expected. But we're not going to have a good experience every time. That's part of the learning, that's part of the frustration. So when we learn the art of meditation practice or the art of learning how to be at ease in any situation, there's going to be that frustration that comes up, and we're going to be like, well, I don't want to meditate. I don't want to meditate. It's too difficult. I'm not peaceful. I can't do it. I'm not good at it. And yet, it's not going to get better if we don't push through that and keep doing it. If we don't keep doing it, then there's really no way it's going to get better. So we have to keep doing it. So that's what we do during a meditation retreat. And it's what I like to call entering the mandala, usually on like day 2. So tomorrow will be the second full day of the retreat. There might be some frustration, some difficulties. The mind puts up resistance. And just to really sit with that and reflect on it instead of reacting to it. That was one of Ajahn Amro's themes during his recent visit. Respond, don't react. So when the mind really puts up this kind of resistance to the meditation practice, or to the sitting, walking meditation, or just practice in general, to the precepts, puts up resistance to the precepts. The Buddha talked about this in the suttas. He said, giving mind to perceptions of resistance. And so being mindful of perceptions of resistance, not giving in to them, but reflecting on them, knowing them as they arise, as they persist, as they cease. And as we keep practicing and we overcome these resistances and these difficulties that we experience in the course of the practice, then that really empowers us, and can, reflecting on our own good conduct, that really can give rise to joy, what we call piti, so that can give rise to quite a bit of joy. When we keep the precepts for a long time, that gives rise to something that the Buddha called the bliss of blamelessness. And so it's actually skillful to reflect on our own good conduct, not as a way of getting puffed up or conceited about it, but just there is a wholesome sense of pride, a wholesome sense of self-confidence that gets built up. And then that gives us some ground to stand on. And when the mind starts to become at ease and content with our own good conduct, then it'll inevitably seek less. So it won't be a seeking mind, and it can come to a sense of peace. So then we feel like we can actually rest, at least for a little while. We actually do get a break. We actually do get a rest. Yeah. When we experience things like unpleasant sensation or tiredness or illness or loss or ridicule, these different things that we experience through the course of our lives, these are dukkha, and we can reflect on that. Any of the great ajahns, great teachers of the past, they all had to overcome difficulties and deal with experiences like this. There's a story of the Tibetan yogi Milarepa. There's a story of him where he's incredible, like heroic austerities, living off of nettles that grew in front of his cave in the mountains in Tibet. Through the course of his practice, so he was still experiencing dukkha, and there's a story that he actually he was getting pretty frustrated because his meditation wasn't coming together at one point, and it had come together in the past, but there was a day when it wasn't coming together, and he just had a very rough, like burlap robe covering his body, and he went outside, and his robe sort of caught on like a rock splinter or something, and his robe got caught, and he's trying to free it, and it ripped, and then a cold wind came up and was making him even more uncomfortable, and he got really frustrated. And then something else happened, like he tripped and fell or something, and he was just like on the ground, and he gets into this state of dukkha, and he was just like, why? This is one of his teaching songs in the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa. Like, why am I still suffering? Why am I still frustrated? Why does it seem like everything is working against me in this moment? But then he reflects on it, and he thinks like that it leads to like a state of letting go. But it's that frustration that spurs him on to that. It's a small thing, but these things happen all the time where we actually need to get pushed. Without getting pushed, then no matter how much study or, on a certain level, no matter how much practice we do, if we don't really get pushed to an edge, we don't really make that shift. So that's really what the precepts are for, to help to push us to a certain edge, which causes us to reflect deeply on dukkha. So if we don't really see dukkha as dukkha, and if we don't see the cause of dukkha as the cause of dukkha, we're still just going to be where we've always been, suffering like we've always suffered. But we have that choice to look the cause of dukkha being something inside ourselves. The Buddha's talking about tanha, craving. And so that's the cause of dukkha, according to the Buddha. We read that, we've studied that, we've read a lot of suttas about it, and yet the way the heart is actually working, the way the mind is actually working, is it's not seeing that craving is the cause of dukkha, it's seeing that this person is the cause of dukkha, this situation is the cause of dukkha, this government is the cause of dukkha, this illness is the cause of dukkha, not craving is the cause of dukkha. So craving is the cause of dukkha is a very radical shift, but to make that shift we do have to be pushed to an edge where we're almost forced to look at that. It always seems like it's coming from outside, but this is what's called sanya vipalasa, or a distortion of perception. It seems like it's coming from morning puja is dukkha, a Zoom retreat is dukkha, the technology is dukkha. It seems to be coming from outside, but really that frustration is welling up inside. The sound not working on the Zoom retreat is dukkha. That's the cause of my dukkha. But that's actually not it. It's me wanting it to work perfectly. That's the cause of dukkha. So making that shift into seeing our experience in terms of the Four Noble Truths, that's just critical. For those of us who want to bhavana, for those of us who want to sekha, be the learners. So day one of a first full day of online Thanksgiving retreat, and it's been a long day, so I won't go on for too long, but just to encourage people to look deeply into these things during this retreat, because that is what's going to cause us to, coming up against an edge is what's going to give rise to a greater sense of enjoyment, a greater sense of ease, a greater sense of peace. Like Luang Por Pasano said earlier, peace is enjoyable, ease is enjoyable. So just looking closely at that with mindfulness. I'll leave that for reflection this evening.